We've got here exhaust manifold removed from the LS 5.3 liter Vortec flex fuel with aluminum head, because there was a exhaust leak at the rear port. Turned out the doggone bolts were slightly loose, letting the exhaust get past over there. So I removed the gasket by only taking the bolts out, cleaned the gasket up, slid it back in there with the manifold still sitting up on top of the exhaust pipe down there, because its nuts kept coming loose in the past, and I've had to take them off, clean the bolts, and put blue Loctite. But these two center bolt holes were hard to get the bolts in. I used a punch over in the other hole over here to wiggle the manifold around and get the bolt started. I got about halfway in this hole and it just won't go right, in part because that particular hole on the manifold is smaller, but also you see I've got this thread tap in here because I chased the threads on these two holes. They had a little bit of crud in them on this aluminum head. I had to stop turning the bolt in because there was too big of a chance of breaking it off in there if I went any further. I was only turning it with a 1/4-inch drive ratchet to prevent that purpose. But when you thread, turn in and back out a little bit. Turn in, it's bottomed right now. But as you thread in, you've got to go in a little and back up to push out any trash that's in there. You see that coming with it? It's not from the bolt, that's the actual aluminum from the head itself. Apparently, I probably should have chased these threads with a tap when I got this engine to swap into here, but I did not have a metric tap and die set. This is a M8 by 1.25 tap. The one bolt that I had in that hole already chased the threads with the die. Clean that off. I'll need to get air and blow these out, would be a good idea. Actually, all 8 holes there. I'm going to take a sanding block with a fine sandpaper on it and clean up the gasket surface of the head there. Let's get up out of this hole. Here's the manifold. Here's that number 8 exhaust port where you can see the exhaust was leaking past it. It was kind of starting to here. This orangish material is actually the copper gasket maker that I had put a thin coating on this gasket originally, basically just to help hold it up there when I originally installed it on that engine, that new gasket, and then left it clean against the head. So I took wire brush and sanding block and cleaned that off already. Because it's a metal gasket and there was no major leak, it's my vehicle, not a customer's. I'm going to reuse the thing. I'm going to scrape that material off, use a sanding block, just sand it off, not even use an air or electric sander, just a block with the sandpaper stuck on it, and clean the mating surface down here that had leaked several times because of nuts coming loose. The bolts, here's the one already chased the threads. It'll be looking a little bit different than the others that are still more, or excuse me, no it's not. Here it is. That's why it looks cleaner. These they're painted blue. I put those brand new, replaced the originals when I installed this engine. a couple years ago when those videos were, because the original engine with what was it, 307,000 miles, I had already replaced the water pump, but no, I had dropped the oil pan, checked all the bearings. I had to replace the oil pump, so I replaced the timing chain at the same time, and had put a new water pump on it at that time. This one is a brand new one. I wasn't going to put a used pump back on a fresh engine. I just saved it for emergency or to pass on to somebody else. But the thrust bearing on the crankshaft wore and let it move, and so it was letting the journals of the crankshaft rub against the bearing caps down there, but it also let the shaft move forwards in the engine, which pulled the torque converter forward slightly out of the oil pump of the transmission, busted that oil pump in a rebuilt transmission, and cost me to have to do another complete transmission overhaul. And of course it wasn't covered under warranty, not only because it was damage caused by the engine, but it had lasted well past the warranty over the transmission overhaul. So because of not getting to change the oil in this thing soon enough in this vehicle with the old engine, I didn't find the metal shavings in the oil pan to tell me that I had to do something with my engine, so it cost me the greater expense of replacing it and overhauling the transmission a second time. The bolts here, like I said, M8 by 1.25. These are the higher grade, so they're 10.9. Takes a 12 millimeter socket. To get the manifold off, you also have to remove the engine oil level gauge dipstick tube there with 15 millimeter socket on these 8.8 bolts, and then the nuts down there on the pipe are also 15 millimeter, needing a deep socket. And the torque spec to put these back in is 18 foot-pounds. If you only have an inch-pound torque wrench, we'll just multiply 18 by 12 and adjust it and get it done. I'm put this video out because from my experience I have now roughly 15,000 miles on this rebuilt engine, maybe only. It doesn't get driven much, maybe 20,000. And the bolts that I properly torqued already came loose. I highly recommend retorquing the exhaust manifold bolts on an LS, and I used a liquid. I left my gasket maker, copper exhaust gasket maker, was still in liquid. It didn't harden before I put it on, so I don't think that could have caused a problem with the torque situation. Maybe it did, but the other side, no leaks. I'm just going to retorque them. I have no idea if they're even loose at all, and these are going to get torqued. And I'll probably, maybe at the next oil change or something, well, not the next one, it's almost due right now, but anyway, I recommend I'm going to be sure to retorque them again in the future so I don't have to go through all this mess. I could have strictly just tightened all the bolts and maybe I'd have got by. I didn't remember for certain if I had a steel gasket or not, and so I wanted to find the condition of the gasket at least. And because of them bolts not going in well because of the thread issues, and then the warping of the manifold and these little small hole that I'm getting ready to drill this out or grind it out with a good quality burr on an air grinder. one of the two, so that it'll line up easier, and don't take a chance of cross-threading. Thanks for your time. There's some urgent safety issues for the USA coming up. I will try to address as soon as possible. Please see my posts, the community posts. I've already put links and statements and so forth out. And please see Green Greg's video from early this morning on his channel, using the information I provided as well as what he gathered. Take care.